Everybody knows exactly what happened. And what I do is I authorize my military. We have the greatest military in the world, and they've done a job as usual. So we have given them total authorization, and that's what they're doing. And frankly, that's why they've been so successful lately. If you look at what's happened over the last 8 weeks and compare really to what's happened over the last 8 years, you'll see there's a tremendous difference, tremendous difference.
That was the president yesterday talking about the U.S. deploying the most powerful non-nuclear bomb in the arsenal that reportedly killed as many as 36 suspected ISIS fighters. Nicknamed the mother of all bombs, that was used to destroy tunnels and caves used by the terror group in the eastern part of the country. During an event at the White House yesterday, President Trump did not answer directly whether or not he had authorized the use of this massive bomb. The decision to drop this bomb comes one day after President Trump announced he's sending National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster to Afghanistan to assess whether more U.S. forces are needed to turn around the war in that country, now in its 15th year. Wow. Okay.
So, David Ignatius, let me ask you about the bomb that was dropped on Afghanistan yesterday. Some people surmise that it was not as much about killing that group of ISIS fighters as sending a message to nuclear countries to remind them we have something that can penetrate underground nuclear facilities. Do you buy that?
I buy the idea that this is part of a general message from Trump. The lid is off. We're prepared to use weapons that might have been restricted before. I must say this is a strange use of this very large ordnance. I've been in that area of Afghanistan. It's really rural and remote. You can't help but think that it's an attempt to intimidate, physically intimidate the fighters there. That's part of war, always. But yes, I think the statement is, hey folks, the gloves are off, and the military benefits of using it in Afghanistan this way probably limited, but the signal is pretty powerful.
And the signal is, John Heilemann, that, and I don't say this in a disparaging way at all, but this would be what the Trump administration would want the world to know, that Barack Obama is no longer president of the United States. If you act badly on the international stage, Trump's people would say, there's not going to be a wringing of hands, and we're not going to sit and talk about this for months and months and then not act. The United States is going to use its military when it feels it's in its best interest to use its military, and you're going to be far more aggressive about it than the 44th president.
Yes, well, certainly, as long as you characterize that as the way that the administration thinks about it and not necessarily the way everybody thinks about it, that's exactly right. They want to draw a very bright line, and I think the Syria case is one where, obviously, because of the history, it's a place where they can draw the clearest distinction, for good or bad, right? I mean, without making any policy judgment about the outcome, this was a case where, faced with similar circumstances, the Obama administration reached that fork in the road and did one thing. The Trump administration did something else. Now, people who are defenders of the Obama administration will point out that President Obama did seek an authorization of military force in Syria, and the Congress didn't want any part of it. So, look, I do think that the question, though, becomes, Joe, given the balance that Trump tried to draw during the campaign between being tough but also being restrained, if now we're going to see projections of military strength in a bunch of different places, what happened to that core, what a lot of people thought was a core bedrock foundation of his outlook on the world, and how much more indiscriminate is going to get a guy who was once kind of like, we don't want to be the world's policeman. Now, is he going to try to play cop in a whole bunch of different places? That's, I think, the big going forward question.
Yeah, and I think, Willie, many people would say that you could define the strike against Syria last Thursday night as, in using John Heilemann's words, tough but restrained. In fact, that's why so much of the foreign policy establishment was actually a bit relieved that it was as restrained as it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think his instinct might have been to go even further, but he did exactly what David Ignatius suggests to do, which is go and talk to the generals and take their advice on it. But you do have simmering now, if you look at the world stage, in relation to the United States of America. You've got Syria, where, by the way, we dropped a bomb that was misguided yesterday and killed 18 fighters we were allied with. You've got, obviously, Russia, and that relates to Syria. You've got Iran. You've got North Korea. We've got Yemen. I mean, there's a busy map for him to deal with.
He had, yeah. I mean, his inbox was just as vexing as Obama's inbox. Again, but the question is, what do you do with that? And the one thing we do know is most of our allies have actually also been heartened by what's happened over the past week.
Yeah, and we haven't even mentioned North Korea yet. Multiple senior intelligence officials tell NBC News America is prepared to launch a preemptive strike if it believes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will launch a nuclear weapons test. Tactics could include missiles and bombs, cyber warfare, or special ops on the ground. U.S. officials say a test could come as early as this weekend out of North Korea. A large-scale military parade expected for Saturday, the 105th anniversary of Kim Il-sung's birth, which is the regime's most important holiday. A top North Korean official says a nuclear test will take place whenever its leader sees fit. Yesterday, President Trump tweeted, "I have great confidence China will properly deal with North Korea. If they are unable to do so, the U.S. with its allies will. USA." Last night, former CIA Director and Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said the United States must grapple with the fact that North Korea is a nuclear nation.
If we were to try to attack them, they would virtually wipe out Seoul. And 20 million people who live in Seoul. And if it became a nuclear war, which is likely, millions of lives would be lost. And that's the reason we haven't pulled the trigger. The fact is we've used both containment and deterrence as a principal policy here. I think, frankly, in the end, that's what we're left with, whether we like it or not. And frankly, it was containment and deterrence that ultimately resulted in the Soviet Union self-destructing.
And many people in the White House have pushed back a little bit against our NBC report. They're saying it wouldn't be a preemptive strike, but they'd be prepared to retaliate.
Right. I'm going to say, though, a lot to digest here, David Ignatius. First of all, I've got the greatest of respect for Leon Panetta. He can be Secretary of Defense for life, as far as I'm concerned. That said, containment deterrence worked with the Soviet Union over 50 years. It's whatever we have done has been an abysmal failure with North Korea, starting back in 1994 with Bill Clinton deciding that he was going to send Jimmy Carter over. I mean, they've lied to us one time after another after another. That said, even with the White House pushing back, I was jarred yesterday when I read this tweet, and also jarred when I heard Sean Spicer say, and all Sean was doing was echoing what the president said, the Chinese can take care of this, or we can take care of this. Now, I've said around this set, that may be where we have to end up if that means stopping a nuclear strike on Seattle. It's one thing for us to say that around the set, but coming from the president or the president's spokesman, that is jarring, and that is far different than a missile strike on a runway in Syria.
Well, they have terrible choices with North Korea. North Korea is a situation where carrots have not worked, sticks have not worked. The inexorable progress of that program has continued. And Trump and his advisors, but I would say the Pentagon behind them, have said, we need to deal with this before North Korea has the ability to deliver a nuclear weapon onto U.S. territory. As difficult as this problem is now, think of what it would be in 2 years.
And isn't that the problem with containment and deterrence? The Soviets, I can say this now without people going crazy, the Soviets militarily were conservative with a small c. They would go into Hungary when they had to go into Hungary, Czechoslovakia when they felt like they had to, Afghanistan. But they would do something in the 50s, something in the 60s, something in the 70s. We're a couple of years away from Seattle facing a nuclear strike.
And
a president cannot
Trump
wait.
Gets that. The trick that he may have pulled off is to draw the Chinese into a recognition that it's better to deal with this now than later. And the Chinese would be helpful to us as opposed to obstructing us as they have in the past. If Trump has done that in this very early summit meeting with Xi, if he's begun that process, I would say of all these achievements we've talked about, that's the one that actually matters.
What are your sources telling you about that? Do they feel like they're moving China in that direction?
So, yes, I think the White House feels that the Xi meeting was precisely what they wanted, which was a real chance for these two people to get to know each other and to talk and form a basis for taking tough decisions. The fact that since that meeting they've talked twice on the phone, and they clearly, Trump clearly said, there's a big UN vote coming up on Syria. We sure would be happy if you abstained. And the Chinese abstained. They voted against Russia. Never seen that in a while. So, you know, there have been a series of things where Trump can say, this is a real relationship, it's transactional, we're working together. And I think the Chinese have sent that message to North Korea. I mean, don't think that we're going to bail you out. We think you're destabilizing the region and basically saying we're with the U.S. in wanting this defused.
Coming up, Ron Fournier is back in town with his dispatch from Trump country, one of Ron's key points. Don't forget why he got elected. Ron will explain that ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.